Hi, everybody, and welcome to this fifth edition of the Nova 111 Talks. This time with Annie Lindmark as our guest, who is Program Director at Vinnova. This conversation will last until 1 p.m. and will be divided into three parts. First, I'll give you a brief introduction to the Nova 111 Talks and to Nova 111. Then we will focus on the reason why we're here, of course, the conversation with Annie. And by the end of the session, we will finish with a Q&A where you can post your questions to Annie. And you can post them in the chat. You do need an account, a YouTube profile to do that, but it only takes less than a minute to do so. So please post your questions also during our conversation, and we'll lift them up during the Q&A by the end of the session. For you who don't know me, I'm Niklas Obel. I have worked at Nova since March of 2020, leading the company in the Nordics. Many of you listeners are Nova members, but others are not. And for those of you who are not familiar with Nova, Nova is a by invitation global top talent network born in Sweden in 1997. Today we are roughly 13,000 members all over the globe, but with a strong concentration in the Nordic countries, in Spain and in Italy. Our main objective is to connect and develop our members and help them accelerate their development and their careers and help them reach their full potential and the impact they have on society and in life in general. The Nova network was born from a talent list called the Nova 100. And last year, we decided it was time to launch a new kind of talent list, the Nova 111. Sweden's first evidence-based talent list, where we presented 10 stars in 11 categories. And they had all been selected through quite a rigorous and scientific selection process involving everything from IQ and personality tests, as well as being screened by a jury of over 55 people, industry experts and assessment professionals alike. The jury then selected one outstanding talent in each category. And in this series of conversation, the Nova 111 Talks, we have the privilege of meeting these superstars, the jury's choice. So please enjoy this conversation with Annie Lindmark, who was the jury's choice and winner of the politics and public sector category. Welcome, Annie.
Thank you so much, Niklas. It's so great to have this conversation today. I've been looking forward for it the whole week.
So have I. Great to see you here. I introduced you as program director at Vinnova, which of course you are, but you have so many other things going on as well. I mean, you're the founder of W.Empowerment and Empowerment Cards. You're initiator of Hylla Henne and winner of various awards. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that and so on. But let's rewind the clock a little bit and start with the early years. Can you tell me a little bit where you're from and how growing up was for you?
Yeah, of course. I'm born and raised in Stockholm. And what else to say? I'm coming from a very loving family with a childhood where I was very encouraged to be myself. Growing up, I had a lot of energy, creativity, and I would say high degree of imagination. I did acting and went to theater courses and always practiced sports. From my teenage years, Thai boxing played a really big role in my life. Gave me a lot of confidence and made me feel strong. So it's a sport that I actually also practice up until today. And so that I think sums up a little bit where my early years is from, a very creativity and sport-based childhood.
All right, Thai boxing. It's not like maybe the most common sport for a young girl and woman. How did you get into that?
I started off when I was 12. Today, I think the sport has been, so much more open, and I think there's a lot of girls doing that sport from that age. But when I started, I think we were only like 2 girls in the group. I can't really remember why I started. I first competed in swimming, and I wanted to do something on totally different. And I think maybe that was influenced by the really cool boy in my class who did the boxing. So I felt, okay, I should try out Thai boxing. And then I was in love with the sport. It's an amazing sport. You really get to work your whole body, and it, as I said, it has brought me so much confidence also doing that sport.
Cool. Apart from that, what early passions and aspirations did you have in life?
Yeah, I always felt very passionate about creating and building things. Seeing something going from an idea to reality is still like the best feeling. And it creates also, I think, hope that we all can be part of changing and building this world. And it all starts by having an idea. So I think in early age, that was a thought that was so powerful that you can actually do things, and you yourself can be part of creating something. And it also brings me back to one of the most powerful quotes I know, said by Emma Watson, the actor, and she's also the UN ambassador for He for She campaign. And back in, I think it was 2014, she started her speech at the UN Congress with saying something like, in my nervousness for this speech and in my moments of doubt, I remind myself that if not me, who, if not now, when? And I really think that is so true. And I live by that quote because it's all starts with you making a choice and taking an action and starting building or creating or talking about something. So I think that's been with me the last years.
That's a wonderful quote, actually. With your background there, it seems like very creative, also like driven by challenging your energy towards creation and so on. How come you went into to study business at Uppsala?
It was not clear for me what I wanted to study because I find very many things interesting. I can be a person who can be very nerdy if I get to meet an expert in the field who loves what he or she does. But I mean, I started off with actually studying psychology at Stockholm's University. I've always been very interested by human behavior. And at one point, I was also having an ambition or thinking that I wanted to be a sports psychologist since I've been practicing sports my whole life. And I was very fascinated about how much psychology is attached for being a successful athlete. So I started off with psychology and also did some coursework in rhetorics. But after 1 year with that, Stockholm's University, I decided I wanted to go to Uppsala and have a degree in business. And I chose Uppsala since it's a university with an enormous historic legacy and rich student life. And business, due to its broadness, and it could give me a little bit of time to figure out what I really wanted to do and what field that spoke to me the most. But in the end, I focused on, wrote my first thesis about behavior finance. And here my year of psychology benefited me in taking that direction. And once again, I was reminded of how intrigued I am by how, for example, the financial market, business landscape, and society are driven by psychology and human behavior. And after that, I also studied in Uppsala and added a master's in entrepreneurship and innovation management. And that, yes, I chose because I feel that next level of doing business or studying business is really like, how can you create your own business? So that's my road of academic choice. And back then, the choices was maybe not always made sense. But looking back now, it really benefited what I'm doing today, working with innovation and new technology. So it's been kind of choosing as I've been doing my different academic courses and programs.
I can't help by asking, in Sweden, it seems sometimes that we're also quite like stuck in terms of there is a clear advantage in studying business or engineering, I would say, if you want to go into the commercial or corporate world, compared to maybe other countries where you can study, something more broad, but you do it in the right university and in a good place, and you can still, enter business or so on. Is this something that you share for young people, that it's, we might be a bit channeled into studying that?
Yeah, I mean, I have always felt, or maybe now I feel, not always, but now I feel when looking back at that, this kind of diverse academic background that I have is great. And I really encourage everyone to add more than just maybe one field to their studies. And I think also maybe we will come into that later on in this conversation, but talking about lifelong learning, I mean, we will need to have a more diverse academic background, maybe than only studying one field or having one education in your lifetime. So yeah, I think we should really try to be better at building our academic courses and programs than we are today. So, I mean, a business background, engineering background is fantastic, but then adding, I mean, a course in philosophy or rhetorics, I think that's, for me, I think that's amazing. And I think it's really needed in today's society, and what we can expect from the future workplaces, etc.
Yeah. Let's get back to that a little bit, but before, I mean, just going through your own background, coming back to that, after you finished your studies, you actually went into at least financial services and banking. Can you tell us a little bit about how your thoughts were when we were about to finalize your studies in Uppsala, and how you arrived at that decision and arrived at Nordea?
Yeah, so basically, after being done with my studies, I did an exchange semester in Hong Kong, studied corporate finance. And when I got back, I was really like thinking of what should I do? I think so many things are interesting. And before Nordea, I did a half year at a fund management firm, which I done work for when I studied. And then I felt I really want to try out working for a bank. And when you look at a bank and add the interest of behavior finance and market analysis, the trading floor comes pretty fast to your mind, at least back then. So that's why I ended up at Nordea Markets, which is, the trading floor on the bank. I also had a friend who worked there and recommended me and said it was like really high-paced, fun environment. So I started off with their trainee position, and it was a really good kickstart on my career, since I got to work with a lot of different things, and very high-paced, which suited me well. And working in that environment or working at a bank, you really understand that there's so many different roles you can have, and so many different academic background or previous experience that can help you in your work there.
How were those early years? I mean, when you come out of school, and I think I meet many of those young, highly driven people, of course, and a lot of people want to, have an impact right away and so on. Those can be quite difficult years. Tell me a bit about your first couple of years and months at in the corporate world.
Yeah, it's such a great question, Niklas. I think, I mean, looking back at it, and when I think about being a newly graduated person, I think it's a very exciting time, because you don't know what's going to be expected of you, but it's also quite nervous time, because you don't know how am I actually doing in the corporate world, etc. So I think it's a pretty special time in your career, that for those first month or first year. But for me, it was really like saying yes to almost anything. I don't know if that was the right decision, but I was very willing to do any challenge that I was faced with. So I really wanted to take on chances and be daring. So I remember just a couple of months in, they were standing a couple of people from a group, and they were discussing like who can present this new product on this large event. And I was thinking, like, should I say that I could do it? But still, I'm really new, and they didn't ask me. But after they have been debating like for 10 minutes, I felt like, okay, let's try it. So I said, maybe I can do it. And they were a little bit shocked, but after rehearsal sometimes, they gave me the chance. So I also really fast got the expression of it's worth taking a risk, and it's worth being a little bit daring in the beginning and saying yes to a lot of things. because that gives you experience and kind of a fuel going forward.
Was it? Do you believe it was a good start to the career, beginning in a large corporation like that, and with lots and lots of both people and divisions and opportunities and so on?
I think it depends so much. Now that is the only thing I can compare to, and I think my experience from working at a large corporate is some knowledge that I would never want to be without, because it gave me the insight of kind of how hard it could be to take ideas further, and like internal political structures, and how important it is to kind of talk with other people before you maybe presenting something sometimes, and everything around that, and how difficult it can be to navigate within a large corporate, but also how successful you can be when you kind of understand the structures. So yeah, I think it was a great start, and I learned so much doing that. And I also advanced from the trading floor and started working later on with more strategic questions in another part of the bank, and that also added to kind of my knowledge portfolio with how to act and present your ideas or work in a way that gets you further.
And then in 2018 you left for Vinnova. Tell us a bit, for those who are not aware of what Vinnova is. You can please both explain your move and also what Vinnova actually does and your roles there.
Yes, of course. So Vinnova is Sweden's innovation agency. Basically, we help build Sweden's innovation capacity, contributing to sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is really like the DNA of the organization and agency. And Vinnova makes this possible by getting organizations to address challenges together by enabling innovation that makes difference. So we basically, one of our largest part is that we fund innovation projects. It could be innovation projects that is hosted by one organization, but often it is actually collaboration between actors, because we really believe in the power of getting different organizations to work together to create new products and services or research for that part. My role is rather broad here. I get to do a lot of things in my role that involves innovation funding, mobilizing and meeting actors, entrepreneurs, policymakers, develop and drive different projects. And I also get to sit in a lot of different task forces and international, national level in different matters, because we are also an expert agency. So the government can come to Vinnova, for example, to ask in different matters when it comes to innovation and technology and research. If we take it down more to what I'm doing on a daily basis, you can divide my time in three things basically. The first one is that I lead an international funding program called Eurostars, aiming at innovative SMEs. So innovative SMEs is a kind of a red thread in my work. But I'm also a team leader for a deep tech work group that we have internally, that we work with specifically companies that are called deep tech. And there's no perfect definition of what that is, but it's basically, if you keep it simple, it is SMEs who has a very strong research connection and trying to solve very complex challenges, and would probably need a lot of time and money to go to market. And the third part is that I work with a rather new area here at the agency, where we focus on future studies and foresight. So basically trying to understand, like, how can we build an internal capacity of understanding what is around the corner. So that is a little bit about Vinnova and a little bit about what I do.
Sounds super exciting, actually. And how is it driving those initiatives? And if you compare your life, leaving banking and going into actually, a government agency, but that still is very much in the forefront in terms of driving innovation.
Doing that move from a corporate organization to a governmental agency, first of all, it was not a really easy thing to do. I haven't met a person who's done that kind of shift, and a lot of my colleagues were a little bit like, "Oh, okay, you're going to a governmental agency, like you're leaving this." So first off, it was kind of a tricky, it's kind of a tricky choice to do, and I wasn't sure, like, am I doing the right thing? Now I of course know that that was a really great move for me. And in one way, I really see it, as you say, I moved from one part of the funding system to another, but they are pretty different, and they symbolize different parts of the funding system. But I had a great career at Nordea and got involved with so many great projects during the years. But now moving over to working more for a governmental agency, it is very much about the shift in, like, who am I working for? That's one really large thing. Before, maybe I was more working on a corporate that had a very strong focus for shareholders, and what can we give the customers, etc., etc. Today, I mean, in some ways, I basically work for an organization that has a mission towards the Swedish citizens. So, I mean, that's a very big difference in kind of who are you working for. And another big difference is, I mean, how more the choices that we do matter for society or Sweden as a country. We talk a lot about Sweden as a country, kind of what we're doing, how we can invest in things that makes a larger impact. And that's a little bit different from what I did before. And also, I mean, it's a really large and great responsibility to be working with tax money. Like, it needs to be done very carefully. And working for a private company, of course, I mean, you could do things and you can fail, and that's totally okay. And maybe the company takes a hit, but if we fail at our mission or do things wrong, I mean, it's basically we let Sweden's taxpayers down. So it's such a difference now with kind of what mission I'm working for and what kind of type of organization that I'm in, and how our work and daily work actually affects me and everyone around me. Maybe a long answer to a short question, I know, Niklas, but
no, I really like that, and it's such a broad agenda, of course, but it must be amazing having that kind of, you know, what's good for the society and what's good for the people approach to that. The title of today's talk is Qualities That Fuel Innovation, and these are questions, of course, that you consider more often probably than most people. What would you say are qualities that do fuel innovation, both in people, but also maybe on you know, the higher levels, in terms of how do we make sure to have structures that really keep a focus on innovation from a societal point of view?
It's such a great and large question, but I mean, to first, I mean, start off the answer in one angle. I mean, we know that our world and society is changing in a really, really fast pace right now, and the challenges that need to be addressed are also of a very different nature than we are used to just, I mean, a decade ago. And the conditions are also changing so rapidly. So I feel that there really is a need to be able to look ahead more than ever before. So that's really one quality. I mean, being able to thinking and working with future scenarios, but also actually taking responsibility of what's happening in 10, 20, 50, 100 years, having a totally different time frame than we had before, and work and try to really incorporate how to work with that. That is a quality to, and maybe we will come back to that, like, kind of, how can you work with being better at that. Another part, I think, is, I mean, being able, as we said talked about a little bit in the beginning, the concept of adapting lifelong learning in order to be, like, innovative as an organization, but also as a person, like being able to stay up to date. And I mean, we have seen some of these figures, a little bit dramatic, but like 85% of the jobs in 2030 haven't even been invented yet, is a number from a Dell study, I think. And also this, that I don't know if you've seen these staples when you can see, like, how long is your knowledge word when you exit like engineering education. While it was like not, if you did your degree in 1930s, you had knowledge that could be used for 35 years. And if you're being done with your education today, they say that maybe the relevance of the knowledge that you took in was 2 to 5 years. This is like, of course, maybe a little bit dramatic in a dramatic setting, but it's true in so many ways. I mean, the information overload today and how much knowledge is being out there every second makes us really that we really need to be updated. So I think also the quality of being able to see your education, your skills as an ongoing process will be also a skill that you need to have in order to stay innovative and be able to, as an employer, to support your employees to do different types of educational courses, but also yourself be open to see like, okay, in this new world or in this coming years, I probably should learn how this and this works, and taking care of that and taking responsibility for that. I can go on for so long for different qualities, but of course, I also feel that I should mention something about the quality as an organization to be data-driven, to really understand what kind of data do we have in an organization, how is it actually looking, what is it that we have to work with, and try to understand how we can work with data in a smart, but of course, very ethical and respectful way. And that maybe leads also to the importance of diversity and inclusion, and understanding the importance of actually making plans and action to it, to measure things, and also being able to add different perspectives to diverse teams to create the best products and services built on data and the humans in the organizations. So I think there is a diverse set of skills that we need to kind of keep updated and talk about in order to meet this more and more rapidly changing environment.
Yeah, there are so many paths that we can take from that. It's such an interesting area, I think. And when you started to say that, we need to have that longer perspective, I think it's also something that it's a bit difficult to have that today. And I mean, so many companies and organizations go away from long-term planning because it's just like you say, it's going to be irrelevant. We can have like a 5-year plan, but after 1 year, you might see that we're taking a completely different direction. How do you see that organizations in general and of course people should think about this challenge? How can you really, because it's so difficult to grasp, like you're saying, if half of the jobs that are going to be performed in 2030 are not invented yet, it's very difficult also to think about, okay, how should I think about reskilling, upskilling my people or myself?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard because if there's not one thing we know is that we can't predict the future, and we should, of course, be a bit careful with telling others what the future will look like. No one knows that. But by making predictions or forecasting or working with scenarios based on what we can see here and now, we can be able to be more informed and kind of be part of creating the future we want to, and make strategic decisions on that. And I really feel that governments, authorities, companies, and the personal person should become better at understanding the future, at least thinking of the future, and ability to deal with changes and new challenges. For example, the pandemic that we just had, it's something that a lot of us, it came as a shock. It was really turning everything upside down, but there were also a lot of predictions that it could happen, and some organizations worked with doing scenario thinking about what if it happens, how will we meet that, etc., etc. So foresight, or future analysis that it sometimes is called, is, I think, one very important part of this. And it's about identifying signals and information, and based on that, preparing for the future, not making a plan that this is going to happen, but really being prepared for it. And it can be about just having on your company or as yourself, I mean, starting to collect things you see that is different, things you see that is changing, change behaviors, new business models or services that pops up. And think about, what does this mean? How can this become something that I should need to plan for in 5 or 10 years? But it could also be, what if this trend is added with this new technology? What new conditions can that create on how we, for example, live, work, or transport ourselves in the future? So I feel, I mean, it's about as mindset in many ways, but you can also, of course, do that. There's a lot of tools and processes that you can do this in a structured way, to gather weak signals and behaviors and taking that in and working with it. And to do it really well, you should actually have it systematically collect and analyze information from several different sources, and then that can end up in analysis of what is likely. And so, I mean, I think this is so interesting, and I'm just in the beginning of learning more and more about future studies and foresight and how we can apply that to organizations, but also for myself, I mean, to work with thinking about the future and starting leading from the future. And there's a word called future shock in future studies, which is really about kind of preventing being shocked by the future, because that happens all the time. I mean, we know that technology is moving really fast, and one day suddenly you have a new tool in front of you that makes you like not ready for it. So preventing future shocks, but actually thinking about the future and different scenarios and cases that can happen, I think is really important.
Yeah, future shock or future proofing. It's also a term that probably resonates well with that. But have you any like examples of organizations who are like have an innovative way of approaching this to really future proof the knowledge and within the organization and their employers to just that, to have the employees being relevant, not just now, but making sure they are relevant in a few years' time as well. Their knowledge, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know any exact company names, but I know, of course, there's other organizations like Nesta in the UK, they are not the innovation agency of the UK, but they are working a lot with kind of how is society working, what trends do we see, and they are really good at working with future studies. But also Sitra, which is a Finnish agency who's also in the forefront of working with future studies. And now Vinnova is trying also to understand more and more about the concept. But I think when you start looking, perhaps, I mean, I heard that Amazon, for example, had this future press release thing where they, I don't know if it's a thing still, but it was really a thing for a long time, where they had this requirement that if you wanted to pitch a new idea, you needed to write a future press release about that idea, where you need to kind of paint a picture of how is this product being launched, how is the customer taking this, and to really put themselves in the future and the future behavior and customers' reactions to their products. So I think when you start looking, probably a lot of companies are working with different types of these tools and scenario thinking. I heard many stories when the pandemic first kind of became known about companies that had, for example, one company within the airlines industry that had tried scenario thinking and talking about what are we going to do if a pandemic hits and people cannot fly, etc. So there's probably a lot of great examples out there.
Yeah. You I mean, you yourself, and we'll come back to that, but you're such an engaged person, and you have so much things going on, like in various initiatives and so on. But do you have any advice for people like that struggle with this, that's thinking like, how should I think in terms of keeping myself relevant, and how should I acquire that knowledge and that I need going forward? Do you have any like methods that are good to keep in mind?
So One method I would say, one way is of course starting to follow interesting people in the field, and we did that exercise in a group here at work where we listed, some people, or it could also be organizations that we follow on, for example, LinkedIn or Twitter, that we think are interesting and influences us. So one thing could just be to start thinking about, do I have any thought leaders or organizations that I think is interesting or in a field that I want to be more into, and start following them on different media platforms. So that's a very easy one. Another one is maybe reaching out to your network, trying to see, is there a specific skill that you would like to learn or get to know more? Why not try to give a shout out to your network or on a social media platform? Do anyone know someone that I should follow or should meet to get to know this better? Then of course you could definitely start engaging others in an area that you really want to know more about. We had here also a group. We work with AI in different contexts, of course, and some do that more and some less. And we had different study groups internally where you could kind of join. Okay, this is for basic, if you want to learn the basics of artificial intelligence, etc. So you could start like really engaging others on your learning journey. And other ways, listening to TED Talks. I love that. It gives me a lot of inspiration. And starting to just kind of log, what kind of interesting trends do you see? What kind of behaviors are changing? I think a lot of us have started thinking about that now, post the pandemic, or the life what we started to see as back to normal, to kind of write down what kind of things do I see now is changing, and starting your own learning in that way.
If you look at yourself, what is the major driver for you? I mentioned that in the beginning. You're the founder of W.Empowerment and other, and you are so active outside of work in various juries and so on and so forth. What is the drive for yourself? Where does this come from?
No, but I'm really drawn to disruptive projects. Things that can turn status quo upside down or go in and change an industry. I think that is so fascinating, because it's probably back to what we talked about in the beginning about what I always has been fascinated about in this, like creating and building things. So I think that's very inspiring to be part of projects or initiatives that kind of thinks in different terms and new contexts. And I would also say, the drive, I think it comes from everyone around me. Beginning my family, everyone is very ambitious and hardworking people. And my dad is an entrepreneur and often have showed me that you can come a long way with a positive mindset and a doer attitude. But of course, nowadays, all the people that I get to have around me and the network that I create every day by drawing myself to others who has inspiring ambitions and so forward. So that's a very important driving force for me. But I would say it comes back to this ability of when you realize that this quote, when you realize that the world wasn't built by other than people like you, it's a little bit not true in always, but it could really make you feel that, okay, I can also do an impact. I can also make change.
Yeah. If you're looking at yourself longer term, what do you have any like dreams or aspirations professionally that that you would love to see being realized?
I want to continue working with the areas that I am today, which is innovation and tech for a sustainable society, and working with new technology, and for example, deep tech focused SMEs, etc. It really feels like it can change so fast. It's a really fast-paced environment. So I will try not to put myself too long in my planning forward, but really just knowing that I want to continue on the path that I'm on, and continue to be part of initiatives and projects that have the ability to bring something new to the table. So that's I think is my aspiration. and continue growing and being better at personal development. Self-leadership is something that we talk a lot about, me and my founder, Sophie, at W.Empowerment, for example. So continue to build my self-leadership and being a stronger value-based leader. I think it's very important.
Yeah, that's looking back though, I mean, when you're that when you have such a drive that you do, I mean, success basically always comes with a lot of setbacks and also sometimes failure. Could you share some of the setbacks that you've had, or the mistakes that you've made, and what you've learned?
Yes, I mean, of course. I mean, honestly, when I'm thinking about setbacks and failures, I mean, that's something that is part of life, and definitely my career at sometimes. And I have them all the time. And now we spend like almost 40 minutes talking about things that are fun and great and things that I'm doing well. But I mean, of course, it's no cliche that like behind every yes, there's like 100 no's, or what it is. And I mean, I have so many of those stories. I don't even know which one I should share. But I mean, I have pitched so many ideas, new project ideas and initiatives that we should do on all my different work environments. And I mean, there's just a handful of them that actually been something. But I've tried, and I'm not taking it personally when there's like not going forward with it. And the same comes to job positions or different types of other assignments. So I would probably say that, I mean, it happens all the time, and I think we should be better at talking about failure and how life really looks like, and how easy it is for me or for anyone else to look back at your, for example, academic background and see the red thread many years later. But actually, it's just it's a path of both ups and downs, and for making it where you are today.
Cool. If you would give the younger version of yourself some advice, that are those who are still at university or just about to graduate, what advice would you give to them?
The first one would be to really build your network. It is not easy to do that sometimes if you don't have one from the beginning, and it's really it takes time and effort, but it's so worth it. So I've been really working on trying to build a network where I both connect people, help others, but also that gives back so much. So I would say to really think of the people that you're at university with, or that are the first colleagues that you have, or et cetera, to really reach out, build your network and build a strong network. And other advice I would say is to reach out to people that inspires you and ask them about the journey. It happens quite often that people reach out to me, and I reach out to people all the time, and it's so powerful to ask honestly your questions to someone, and often they are willing to really tell how it is. So that one I really encourage it. And also, we're living in a pretty small country. It feels like everyone knows each other sometimes. So if you really want to get in contact with a person, you should at least try to write to them on the different social media platforms, or etc. And then I would also say another advice would be that you don't need to know where you're going. You don't need to know the final goal. It's something that I so many times thought that I would need to do. That like when I started, it felt like, okay, what do you want to be? You have to know like the long-term goal, etc., etc. But actually, you don't need to do that, I feel. You need to know what is important for you. You need to know what your strengths are. So work on your self-leadership, work on getting to know yourself. Invest time in that, because that will be like the best path for you. Because you will, when you're standing in front of a large decision, you can go to yourself, because you know yourself. You know what is important to me, what actually feels good for me, and so on. So that I would really, really encourage everybody to do. And it's not something that you do once. You need to continuously have that in you, reflect and stop and thinking of what is happening right now, how am I feeling about this, etc.
Yeah, I love that advice. It's easy to think that people who are successful, they saw the path from the first seed to the final product already from the beginning, but that's rarely the case. Of course, it's like you say, you start working on something, and then that will pivot into something else, and which will pivot into something else, and so on. But as long as you stay true to what's important to you and your path, I mean, that's something that can take you to different places. So yeah, I love that advice. I see that it's 1:45. Let's open up for some questions from the auditorium. I mean, we have plenty of other questions as well, of course. Let's see if we have some. For those of you who are listening in, please post them in the comments, and post your questions there, and we will take them one by one while people are getting to it. What book or author, Annie, has had the biggest influence on you, or other, I would say, or other like information channel?
Information channel, TEDx or TED Talk has been early on a very big inspirational source. When it comes to book and author, I would say Robin Sharma's book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Both me and my siblings, we have read this book and really love it. And I think I reread it very many times. So I think that book is great. It's a little bit about kind of finding your purpose in life, what is important for you. And there's some tools for kind of mental health and personal development in that book. So that's a winner. I can definitely recommend it.
Coming into to some questions regarding your engagements outside of your work and innovation and so on. Tell us a little bit about W.Empowerment and what made you start that initiative and why that felt important for you.
Oh yeah, it all started, 8 years ago. Me and my close friend Sophie, we felt that we really wanted to have a platform or a context outside our work where we could meet others and talk about, really self-leadership, what is important for you, kind of what are our strengths, what is our values, dreams, etc. So we started actually to search around for different platforms or contexts or networks that could provide that. And we found some, but we also wanted to have put on the layer where we talked about also entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial spirit and how that is so important, not only having the self-leadership, knowing kind of what is important for me, my values, but also having the entrepreneurial mindset of taking that and going forward and creating things. So then me and Sophie, we started W.Empowerment, which is still, it's a network with around 500 women with the focus on self-leadership and entrepreneurship. And we have hosted multiple events and meetups during the years, and basically getting people to meet and having honest conversation about their values, dreams, and aspirations. So that's the core of what we do. We host this meeting point where we learn and discuss, exchange knowledge with people that we usually not maybe working with or are friends with. So people come very often alone to our meetings and for the kind of the platform of meeting. And also 2 years ago, we also went further with that and started W.Empowerment, which is more a concept where we host conversation workshops, and we have created this tool, Empower Cards, which we feel is it's a way to help people having more meaningful conversations, because it's not easy to just start having a conversation that could lead you to talking about things that are important for you. Sometimes you need to have a little bit of a push or help. So Empower Cards is based on gratitude, values, and dreams. And it's conversation cards that kind of helps you spur some questions and conversations that can make you feel present and inspired and reflect.
I love that concept of really helping people have meaningful conversations. And you promised on the last lunch we had with the other Nova 111 winners to bring that the next time. So I'm looking forward to that. We have some questions from the audience as well here. What's the largest challenge that you see in the near to midterm future in your field?
Oh, that's such a big question. I mean, it's right now a lot of focus has been the last couple of weeks, of course, on the climate challenges that we have, and how we can work to really doing a system. We talk a lot about system change and system innovation, kind of how we can gather different actors, but that are coming from different angles to meet and create an action plan for how to solve this and rebuild and rethink the whole chain. For example, I mean, talking about food, it's not only what we eat, it's kind of how we produce food and how we transport the food and what type of foods. I mean, it's so many different actors that need to come together to solve some of these systematic challenges that we have. But I mean, it all comes down to again the 2030 and the 17 sustainable goals that we are now only soon having 8 years left to meet. So of course, that I would say talking about something that is more on near time and on another part, I would say mental health. I mean, after this pandemic, and even before that, it is so clear to us that we are having we are too lost to find real solutions on how to work with mental health on your work, in your professional life, but also in your private life. So we need to start talking more about how we are feeling and how we can approach this as a society. And there was a study that said that young people in Sweden have never felt more alone than right now. And this came only a couple of weeks ago. So this is something I feel is a very much of an attitude and behavioral change that we need to address. So that is to answer.
That's a very important issue that you bring up, both of those, of course. Here we have another maybe more concrete question relating to what resources do you recommend to get into future research, forecasting, etc.?
What resources? I don't know, Paul, if you're... Sorry?
I suppose tools and those kinds of
things.
Yes.
Yes. As I said, I really think it's important when bringing in future studies or foresight into an organization that is done in a structured, systematic way, so it doesn't become only a philosophic conversation where we think or kind of being out of the blue thinking about the future. So I think there you need to bring in some real hands-on, maybe it could be anything from consultant help to kind of futurists could help kind of guide what types of tools there are, what types of processes there are. There are a lot of them that you can find also online for free, where you can work with this, as I told you, the future press release, but also scenario thinking and easier and more advanced tools that you can use in order to, in a group, work and brainstorm how your organization could meet future challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Relating to that, are there any podcasts that you would recommend, in these areas?
Yeah, I really like the Oracle. I think it's actually IKEA who stands behind it. It's called the Oracle. It's a podcast where a lot of or different people every episode is a different person who gets to first start off painting up a future scenario of something, and then they go down into their expertise and talk about kind of what is behind that vision that they painted up in the beginning. So I would definitely recommend the Oracle, and then I would recommend Vinnova's own podcast called Innovation. It is also a podcast that brings in different guests and talk about specific topics and have external flavors to it. Other great podcasts is, I would say, okay, maybe I just leave it with these two, so we can make up one more question. Yeah.
Yeah. The last question here from the audience is, how would you define innovation in terms of social impact?
How I would define innovation in terms of social impact. I'm trying to figure out what the question is about. I mean, at Vinnova, we work with primarily innovation that could lead to social impact. So in all the different innovation and research projects that we fund, you kind of need to have an aspect of how that is bringing some type of social impact. So you, for example, need to rank yourself to the 17 sustainability goals when you get funded from us. So I would say, I mean, before we talked more about social innovation and social entrepreneurship, but I think we're moving a little bit away from that and understanding that very many of those innovations that we need right now and that also will be could be profitable large companies are having a social impact direction. So I don't know if that's answer your question, Clara, but if you want to elaborate more on it or any of these questions, you could definitely reach out to me also afterwards.
Yeah, but it's a great answer because I mean there are so many, of course, ways to achieve social impact in so many different areas from from schooling and education.
Yes, I remember a couple of years back when I was on an investor event, and I mean, that time there were, I met an entrepreneur who said that, it's so ignoring because people think that we are a non-profit because we have such a clear social impact goal in our company. And then fast forward to kind of last year when I was on another investor event where a large investor said that that's having a social impact as a foundation in your idea is kind of a hygiene factor. So it's, I think, also the shift of what investors are looking for and how we are talking about these things have rapidly changed, and also that it could be very profitable if you have a social impact idea. It's not only that you need to be a non-profit or doing something for the good. You can also do good by doing good.
Yeah. Agreed on that. About trying to do good, how can the Nova help out in terms of driving this innovation and so on?
I think Nova as a network is doing great with hosting so many different events and meetups on several different topics. One topic I feel that we should have more focus on is perhaps what I mentioned in my talk here, but the importance of self-leadership, kind of how you actually build strong leadership qualities, being value-based, because I think that's the future of leadership. But also, I would say this quality of thinking and working towards the future. So future studies and foresight skills would also be something I think we should talk more about and learn more about together. And as the question you had before, Nicholas, kind of what companies are doing what, that would be so interesting to hear more about from the Nova Network. What are you doing inside your organizations to keep track on what's happening and meeting the different behaviors and attitudes and challenges that we have?
Yeah. Thanks for that feedback. I'll definitely bring that to the team. One just last question to Yanni. Where can people connect with you the best?
Yes, you can connect with me through LinkedIn. That's probably one of the best places. But I also have a website, annielindmark.com, where my email is. But I would love to connect with as many as possible through LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for this chat, Annie. It's been great talking to you.
It's been really great talking to you too, Nicholas. And I hope everyone who listened in had a great time. And I'm looking forward to keeping the conversation going afterwards also in different channels.
Great. Yes. Thanks to all of you who have been listening into this, and wish everybody a great day. Thank you.
Bye.